Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We continue with our topic into the institutions of Muamalat. We continue walking in the streets of Medina, trying to understand how the best society that has ever existed and will ever exist organize themselves, what institutions they have, what instruments of trading they had, how they operated, etc. The focus is therefore, what is halal, is what we are asking. We know what is haram, riba is haram. What is halal? What is our model? Instead of Islamizing somebody else's model, Western capitalism and the institutions, in the fashion of bank, Islamic bank, insurance, Islamic insurance, credit card, Islamic credit card, blah, 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 what is our model? We have already argued that, of course, we had a model. This is to answer those people who say, we didn't have a model, like we didn't exist before. That is simply a lie, a complete misrepresentation of reality. We had a model. And we have already looked into the fundamental institution of this affair of trading, which is the marketplace. We have not invented anything new. We have invented the public marketplace. We're just recalling the marketplace, which has existed for thousands of years before Islam, and it will continue throughout all the times after this hiccup of capitalism. This sickness goes away. And from the caravans, from the markets emerges the caravans. Somebody was asking me just in the break, how can we bring the caravans? And I said to him, well, first of all, you need to bring the markets. Without the markets, you cannot have caravans. You cannot have the caravans coming to the middle of the street or enter into a Tesco and sell. So you need a public marketplace. Then the caravans come in. Then once you have the caravans, you have kirat. And we will come to this point. But before, we are going to speak about money. The question of money in Islam. Again, we are told that we don't have any model, we don't have any system. Islam is totally open. So paper money produced by central banks, imposed by legal order, by compulsion of the state, by legal tender laws, through constitutions, linked to debt and the banking system, that is the most advanced way for the future. That is prosperity. This is the epitome of mankind. Now, this is not the epitome of mankind. This is the downgrading and slavery of mankind. What is money in Islam? Dinar and dirham. They are mentioned in Quran. The US dollar is not mentioned in Quran. You can check it out for yourselves. The ringgit is not mentioned in the Quran either. But this one is mentioned in Quran. Dinar and dirham. Ibn Khaldun says, because they are mentioned in Quran, you cannot change them. So the weights that they were admitted and they were established at the time of the Sahaba, these are the weights. The weight of the dinar was the mithqal. So you cannot change the mithqal, 4.25 grams. You cannot change it. And the dirham, in what is known as the standard of Omar ibn al-Khattab, is 7/10 of the mithqal. So this is 4.25. This means the weight of the dirham is 2.975 grams. You cannot change it. This is there forever. Now, the position of Islam regarding money, it comes under the general same rules that apply to all trading. There's nothing special. It's just another commodity. In fact, it is a commodity. So what is the general rule? The general rule is in Quran, tijaratun a'an taradim minkum. Something immediately obvious and intuitively understandable. which is trade by mutual consent. It is obvious that if somebody tells you you have to eat, the only food that you are allowed to eat is rice, and the price of my nasi goreng is 10,000 ringgit per dish, and you have no choice in the matter, you will argue that this is not trading. You can call it extortion, you can call it fraud, you can call it whatever you like, but that's not trading. Trading requires that you offer and the other person agrees with his free will. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say, Tijaratun an taradin minkum, except money. He doesn't say except money. Nobody says except money. Money is part of trading. And for hundreds and thousands of years, the people were free to choose the currency they want. So in Medina, the people use gold and silver and dates and salt and barley and whatever they wanted to. The Tuaregs, they used for hundreds of years salt. It made sense to them. Big coins made of salt, this size. That was convenient for them because it's one of the major things they needed in their journeys. Is it halal? 100% halal. If somebody wants to use seashells, they are most welcome. As long as tijaratun an taradin minkum. The government doesn't have authority to tell you the only currency that you can use in my kingdom is copper coins. Because I own the copper coins, the copper mines. He doesn't have authority. He doesn't even have authority to say the only currency in my kingdom is the gold dinar, which it will make at least a certain degree of sense. He doesn't have the authority. For you cannot force the people to accept any currency. It must be freely chosen. So what do you have to say about the new type of money that we have in the pockets today that says you have to use it because you are a Malaysian citizen? Or any other country for that matter? It's not legal. Is not acceptable. You cannot force the people to use this currency. And the second question is, what is the thing that you're offering me? Ringgits. I promise to pay you 20 ringgit. And the next question is, you promise to pay me when? Where do I go and get it? What is the thing that you are promising me to pay? What is a ringgit? It's a silver coin. I don't have a ringgit here with me, although maybe Awaluddin has. Shukran. Shukran jazilan. Edward VII, king and emperor, straight settlements, $1, and in Jawi, 1 ringgit. Satu ringgit. The weight of this is identical to the Spanish dollar, which the Spanish invented the dollar. Is the same weight as the peso, which was one of the most popular coins of the Spanish emperors. And the weight just continued being used. But it was called ringgit, which in Malay means like cut, serrated. Because that was the shape of the original coin, so they call it, this is the one serrated coin. And this is 1 ringgit. And so when the government tells you, I don't have any ringgit here. Can I borrow 1 ringgit from somebody? Hajjabuluddin, thank you very much. Well, if you notice that with the new plastic money that we have just imported from Australia, it doesn't say anymore, I promise to pay you 1 ringgit. Quite conveniently, like the euro, it doesn't say that anymore. But if you go to any of the old things, it says, I promise to pay you 1 ringgit. The logical conclusion is, you go to the central bank and you say, okay, thank you for keeping it. I really thank you for that. But, I don't really want you to have it. I get to keep it for myself in my house. So here it is, your receipt, give me the ringgit. Well, they have a problem because this is probably about 100 times the value of a ringgit. So if all the Malaysians start going and getting the ringgit, there is not enough money to pay. But don't worry, they never had the intention of paying you. Because by the time Malaysia became independent, by that time, when you came into the history of central banks had already ceased to back the paper money with gold and silver. This happened by your colonial powers way before you came into independence. It didn't occur, of course, to any one of the people who then declared Merdeka to realize, what are we going to do about money? Because they didn't have any interest in Islam. There was secular powers. Islam was just a decoration. Just like it happened with Ataturk, like it happened with Ali Jinnah. Just decoration. It had no meaning at all. The reason why you don't have Islam today here in Malaysia. What you have become is just another form of colonial servitude system at the hands of people who don't even know who they are. But before we enter into the politics of this, let's go back to the fiqh of this. Here's another example, but it is in Pakistan they are not so prude, and they still write, I promise to pay you 1,000 rupees. By the way, the inflation in Pakistan today is approximately 20% a year, which means that the people in Pakistan have to endure the fact that at the end of every single year cycle, 20% of the money is gone. Beautiful. Islamic inflation, I guess. And but it still says 1,000 rupees. Well, I'm going to show you what a rupee is. It's slightly smaller than the ringgit. The weight of this is $1. This is 1 rupee made of silver, also made by the Mongols. I have the Mongol version. The Mongol version is slightly smaller but thicker. The weight is the same. This is the rupee of the Mongols. This is the rupee of the British, who just standardized it naturally with. Of course, they didn't fail to put the face of Queen Victoria, I think it is. Yes, Queen Victoria. And that was a rupee. And then when the Bank of India promised to pay 1,000 rupees, you go there and you get this. Now the State Bank of Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, with the Haram State Bank of Pakistan, they promised to pay you 1,000 rupees. And as I said to the people just very recently on national television in Pakistan, I encourage the people to go to the central bank and demand your rupees. 1,000 rupees, for your information, is about like $10 US dollars worth. This is about like 3 dirhams, which is about like 6, approximately something in the region of $20 or something like this. Huh? So 1 is 20. For simplicity, let's call it 10. So 1,000 will buy you 1 of these. So when they promise to pay you 1,000, it will cost them 1,000, that is 1 million rupees. That's the reason they're not going to pay. But let's say that you go to the Bank Negara, like I have said to the people in Pakistan, go to Bank Negara and say, please pay me my ringgit. And they say, no, you don't understand. this is the ringgit. No. I mean the silver ringgit, not this. The silver ringgit. They say, no, you don't understand. It's not there. If you insist, they will not call the police. They will call a psychiatrist. They will say, this man has gone completely nuts. He doesn't understand anything. Now, in the best of all possible conceptions, from an Islamic point of view, this is dine. And this is an Islamic term that it goes in parallel with another word in Arabic called ayn and dine. Ayn means tangible, something that is right there. Okay? Ayn, dine, on the other hand, is anything which is a promissory note, a debt, a liability, I promise to pay you, an IOU. All that is dine. All right. In all the schools of law, it is forbidden to pay zakat with dine. So you tell me, how can you pay your zakat with this stuff, this plastic stuff, which is not even dine? Because dine means IOU. This is just a piece of plastic. To figure that out in Islamic law, you have to start twisting yourself round. You need an Islamic banker alim to make this thing halal. Because it's a piece of paper, of plastic. Sorry. Sheikh Ilish, who lived in the days when the first paper money was introduced into the Muslim lands in Egypt, and Sheikh Ilish lived as the head of the Maliki Madhab in Al-Azhar University. And the days of Muhammad Abdu, the traitor who sold Islam. And people came to him, to Sheikh Ilish, with the question of paper money, precisely regarding zakat. And they say, but Sheikh, can we, the British have brought this money now, can we pay zakat with this? And the Sheikh said, okay, let me think about it. And, a few days later he came and he said, yes, you can pay zakat with it. And the students were shocked because they were expecting to say, no. And the Sheikh said, you can pay zakat with it, but only for the value of the ayn of the paper. That is the weight of the paper. So if you pay zakat with this, the only zakat that you are paying is the value of the plastic paper, because what is written in it is irrelevant to zakat. So how does it work that comes into the picture? You have a body of ulama that they are here to help you. So they say, no, look, it's more convenient for you to pay with this, because ultimately all this thing goes to the poor and it will be terribly inconvenient for you to have gold and silver, and therefore we have just changed slightly the law in order to facilitate the zakat. And therefore, out of the public benefit, we pay zakat with the currency that the government, the legitimate currency of government of Malaysia has declared. And everybody goes back home, happy as pie, watching the next telenovel that comes into the picture. And we keep moving. The only problem is that you cannot do that. It's zakat. Well, in other things you can be flexible, not in zakat. You cannot go and say, after years of playing to Mecca, why don't we just change the Qibla just for a couple of weeks to Shah Alam? You can't do that. He said, no, but it's more convenient. You see, it's just so difficult to find out the Qibla to this. Shalam is so easy. And then the people, all they have to do is to look through the window, they see where the mosque is, that's it. You pray in that direction. Only for a week, anyway. You cannot do that. Or you can say, look, why 3 rakats in Maghrib? Why don't we pray 5? You know, it seems that you have been doing wudu and 3 is too little. You know, just pray 5. Well, because you can't. And you cannot change the rules of Zakat because it's more convenient, because it would be much easier. But especially, you cannot change it in order to introduce an instrument which is haram in the first place, issued by an institution which is haram in the second place, and the rules that they are forbidden in the third place. But who are we to say? Listen to Dr. Bahatir. When we brought the idea to Mahathir, he, with all his brilliance, and one has to give him credit, it took him 30 minutes to understand it. He said, yeah, absolutely, totally right. The gold dinar is the currency of the Muslims. And then he went and he said, the US dollar is a fraud, if you remember. Check it in the internet. Paper money, it has not intrinsic value. And we have to eliminate the US dollar. So the dollar as paper money is a fraud, but not the ringgit. The ringgit is a piece of paper, but it has intrinsic value. It's not a fraud, and therefore is not unlike the dollar. We have to preserve it. Now that doesn't, I don't know where you can hold these two arguments together. For in fact, if you go back to the Bank Negara and you say, what is backing? What are the reserves of the Muslims of Malaysia in order to support the ringgit? Some people think it's gold and silver. I can't believe that people still think like that. I mean, never mind, go to the internet, it's all in public space, so check out what is the reserves of Bank Negara. And you will find, if maybe surprised or not, that 85% of your reserves are US dollars. So here's the problem. If the US dollar is a fraud, what would you call a currency which is backed by fraud? By pieces of fraud. Okay, let's carry on the argument a little bit further. Mahathir goes and he says to the Arabs, don't sell your oil for pieces of paper. Quite rightly, he figured out, we cannot allow one country in the world, okay, this one, to have issued the currency of the world. They give us pieces of paper, and we give them oil, aluminium, gas, blah, 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 blah. When they need more, they print more. Well, you don't need to be Einstein to figure out that if one country has this privilege, they're going to become richer, it doesn't matter what. Because it costs them nothing to buy whatever they want to. Or they have the unique privilege of printing their own money. If they get themselves indebted, they pay in their own money. You see how it works? You go to the shop, and then when it comes to payment, you say, me, Omar Asmoon, I pay 20 ringgit. You sign, and that's it. I don't see how you are going to ever become poor. Because you have unrestricted capacity to issue as much money as you need. Is under any regulation this system? Is anybody constraining the United States? Would anybody put them in prison? No. For they already defaulted their obligations. When in 1971 Nixon couldn't pay the promise of $35 per ounce, they just say, you know what? We don't pay anymore. which is wonderful, but a fraud, except there was no police in the world to put them in jail. Instead of that, everybody jump up and down in the West and they say, this is crazy, but let's carry on. Well, they have a good reason in the West to accept this system, but not in Malaysia. Well, in Malaysia, they were also jumping up and down. They didn't care. They keep buying US dollars, as we are today. At the brink of dollar crisis the world has never seen before, when Russia and China are starting buying gold and silver, when they are saying we are pulling out of the IMF, Bank Negara continues buying US dollars. Brilliant. The national debt keeps increasing. I was just looking at some figures the other day. 350% of the GDP. You are bankrupt. But you continue building malls like there is no tomorrow. As if you've never heard of Dubai. The population, don't you worry about the population, they don't have a clue. Is never mind, the religion, who is the only way you will be able to have a fixed assessment over these matters. I know them all. I can speak about your muftis and I have met them or have written to them. Those who understand, a few, they have told me, I agree with the gold dinar, but don't ask me to write a fatwa, because it will not pass. Sultan of Selangor, the one before this one. He understood it, but he told me very frankly, in this country it will never pass. First of all, I cannot make fatwa on my own. I have to go through this council of ulama, and I can guarantee you this doesn't go forward. The Mufti of Kelantan stood up on the day we were launching the dinar of Kelantan, and he told us, looking down, he couldn't look at in our eyes. Somebody had written that for him. Basically, give us a fatwa. Basically, he didn't say it literally, but he almost said that the gold dinar is haram. And then he carried on with Islamic banking is the solution, blah, 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 blah. You have ulama on television every day bombarding you with Islamic banking is the most wonderful thing in the world. There are people in Pakistan already sick of Islamic banking. One of the great defenders of Islamic banking, which is Mufti Taqi Usmani, who is the second generation of the one who invented Murabaha. Invented Murabaha because he invented it. And who, without him, there will be no Islamic banking without his contribution, his fantasy contribution. But today, when we are reaching the third and the fourth generation of Islamic bankers, who have gone way beyond inventing Arabic names for fraudulent contracts, now they're Islamizing futures, derivatives, sukuks, bonds, stock exchanges, Islamic Dow Jones, which is my favorite one. Islamic credit cards. I used to say to the people here when I first came to Malaysia, one day they will Islamize the credit cards. And they say, no, they cannot go that far. Well, too late, done. Well, today when the whole thing has gone just completely inside, there is nothing more to Islamize. Then Taqi Usmani is saying this doesn't work. This is unacceptable. Not in Malaysia. We carry on. Now, it's not that you are not intelligent enough. It's that you live in a police state. The beauty of the West, I told you before, is to mask violence with reason. They just stamp in your forehead a commercial tax, and nobody complains. They are not allowed to do that. Just because they're indebted. That money doesn't go to you to make more schools. It goes to pay the debt that it has already been generated. But don't worry, they are building more. The Muslims, the great days of Islam, the governments left to their children waqf, land, money, so that their future will be better, so that they could go to the school for free because there will be money allocated for them, like you would try to do with your own children. But your government leaves debt to your children. Spend now and let our grandchildren pay for it. Beautiful. None of you has come up with this policy because none of you will say this is acceptable. National debt comes as a matter of fact in this society. You have to operate with national debt. You are lured into national debt. That is a question of money. You are not allowed to talk about it. And if you are allowed to talk about it, you are not allowed to say it loud. The Central Bank of Malaysia wrote to KGT, the organization that in Kelantan built the gold dinar, that I had for 2 years. And the new Islamic government has almost destroyed the whole idea, promoting now Islamic banking instead. But the central bank, obviously not knowing what that the Islamic Party is not interested in gold dinar, especially after the death of Tuan Guru Rahimullah. The situation is now that, well, they wrote to the company and they said, you are not allowed to mint more gold coins. How do you dare to undermine the national currency? The CEO of the company, who I met just recently in Kuala Lumpur, he was shocked. He said, look what Bank Negara has written to me. And I said, you have to be thankful to God that they write like this. It means even though the gold dinar in Kelantan is almost disappeared, they're still scared of you. They're still scared that, you know, the few thousand coins we have sold in Kelantan could undermine the national currency. As if they don't have enough what they are doing themselves. Are they going to blame us? Are they going to still say that the gold dinar of Kelantan is responsible for the downfall of the ringgit against the US dollar, as we are seeing right now? Are they so blind that the only solution that there is for the people to save themselves against the disaster that is coming is not allowed to be even to be said? Can anybody in their sanity say that the gold dinar is not the sunnah? Don't you have enough evidence to see that the people of Medina use dinar and dirham? That for 1400 years, as long as the Caliphate existed, the currency of Islam has been the dinar and the dirham. Can anybody forbade the people for minting coins and use them as they see fit? For is there anybody putting a gun in the hands of the buyers, in the heads of buyers of dinar and dirham in Malaysia to use gold dinar? No. They are buying it freely. Because they love Allah. Because we are doing it because we love Allah. Because we are tired of riba. Because we believe we have a responsibility. And because we cannot tolerate being lied upon. Because we don't want to be another brick in the wall. Because we want to be able to say to Allah, we did not accept. Who is the Central Bank of Malaysia? Who dares to say to the establishment of the gold dinar that they cannot accept it? The haram institution of the haram, the mother of all riba institutions, the most evil institution in the country, they dare to tell us we cannot use the gold dinar. Well, they're going to get shocked to know the country is ready to bring back the gold dinar in a much larger force than we ever did before. But this central bank is not going to scare me. In fact, it encourages me. But I bring the subject because I want you to say to yourself, what does it say to you? That the bank Negara, which by the way, you carry in your pocket a stamp of them every day, he doesn't want you to use gold dinar. What does he say to you? Does it scare you? Well, fear Allah more than you fear the central bank. Because if that is a problem to you, then you are in big trouble. That brings you to an understanding of taqwa in a very different way. I understand that people are thrown into a society we don't choose. If we would have been born 800 years ago in Western Europe, we will be born in a serf family and bondage for the rest of their life to the lords would have been something natural. Nobody could imagine what a market is or what a coin is because it didn't exist. So in that way, society conforms upon us certain codes we are not even aware. You are born in the day of paper money, but you have a brain. Unlike the serfs in the days of Carloman, we have Islam. And you have to decide. The US dollar is a fraud. The Federal Reserve Bank is a fraud. It's controlled by a group of private individuals. The Americans are not even allowed to know who they are, who issue this piece of paper that backs this other piece of paper, which is a promise of this that doesn't exist anymore. You tell me where's the rationale behind that? So, we have to say to them, this is irrational. And we have to say to them, no. No. La. You say to the whole thing, la. Is not acceptable. Not to us. The introduction of a single currency, like the dinar and the dirham in the Muslim Ummah, means the elimination of all the forex. The ridiculous idea that a Muslim from Malaysia, when he wants to trade with another Muslim in Pakistan, you have to go ringgit, US dollar, rupee, and back again, rupee, US dollar, ringgit. The intermediation of magical US dollar, nobody questions, but you have no choice. If I want to transfer money from here to Lahore tomorrow, I have to go through a bank in New York. Beautiful. And I have to go through an exchange rate, obligatory, to the US dollar. So what will happen if you have dinar? Good for every user. Dinar has no inflation. One chicken at the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam cost 1 dirham. 1 lamb at the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam cost half a dirham. Dinar, half a dinar. Today you can buy one chicken for less than 1 dirham in Malaysia, or Indonesia or Pakistan. Today you can buy 1 lamb for approximately, almost, probably a little bit less, half a dinar in Pakistan, in Malaysia, and Indonesia. Commodities against commodities, they remain more or less the same. The value of the gold dinar there, then, and the value of the same coin today is almost remarkably, surprisingly, the same. Compare that to the US dollar. $1 of 1930 is equivalent to 4 cents of a US dollar of 2014. 4 cents. In other words, it has lost 96% of its value. The remaining 4% is about to vanish. Compare it with the rupee. To the inflation occur by the US dollar, you have to add another 20 times more of Pakistan. Not only they have lost value against the US dollar, the dollar, which is already falling down, it has lost the value 20 times faster. I mean, the rupee of Indonesia, I don't even want to do the calculations. What is it today? 100,000 to the dollar? 10,000. 10,000. Do the maths, look into it. It's just fraud. Fraud. Inflation is theft. Theft. You are being robbed. We are being robbed as we speak. The Muslim Ummah is not allowed to talk on the matter. They are not allowed. It's not a matter of debate. You cannot talk about these matters. You can talk about everything else. The scarf of woman. Look at the hudud of Islamic Party. Where is it that it says no inflation? Where do they speak about riba is haram? No, they are saying, bring me more Islamic banks, please. That's why AMNO, the biggest bless for AMNO is to have an opposition party such as the Islamic Party. It's a blessing, because it guarantees they can be ruling forever. Where's the Islam then? Where's this matter being brought forward? It can happen. But it depends on you. Or you can just leave it for the government to do it, as most people do. Again, the issue regarding money is not something that you can look at academically. That you can say, well, I mean, I have learned something today. There is something wrong with paper money, definitely. So let's go into the next chapter. So what? This is about you. This is about us. And that will bring us to tomorrow, a conversation when we will discuss what can be done. But I cannot even start telling you what can be done if there is not something within you that says, I want to do something. This is something I'm not going to tolerate. This is unacceptable. It's to that person that the answer, the possibilities of what to be done, is to him that these new questions that we will visit tomorrow, there will be answer for. So the question of money. Does Islam anything to do with Islam, with money? Do we have anything to say? Yes, we do have something to say. Do we have Islamic law covers the question of money? Of course. What do you think? Islam covers every aspect of law except the money? Is that what you're trying to tell me? That money somehow they've forgotten about to cover this thing in Islamic law? Of course it is covered in Islamic law. Is it clear? Is more than clear. Can, in an Islamic system, be tolerated a regime whereby legal tender laws, which means you are obliged to use the currency issued by the government, is allowed? The answer is no. Can you have in Islam gold standard systems whereby we have paper money but it's 100% backed by gold and silver? No. They know, but it's convenient. But you cannot use it as money. You can only use it for the purpose it will be intended for, to pay a check. A check, yes, but not money. Who invented the checks? The Muslims invented the checks. We invented the check. It's the souk, where sukuk come from, in fact. Receipt is mentioned in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. It's an IOU. We invented them. We made the system of money. We invented the whole thing, which is halal in it. The only thing is that the whole thing was extrapolated, stretched, and together with riba, it became banks, which is the problem that we have today. When we look at the matter of riba tomorrow, which I promise to you will be enormously exciting, you will be able to understand what a bank is and how paper money came into existence, not by the Declaration of Human Rights, The world didn't come together and say, let's choose paper money because it's really convenient. It was forced upon our throats. And we must understand. We must understand. We must look into these matters. It matters to us. It's ours. It is the whole world that is at stake in this. If we do not speak, our neighbors are not going to speak. If we are not brave, we are just allowing everybody to go into the same net of theft and extortion in which we find ourselves in. The system is dying anyway, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has declared war on it. The house is falling apart, but let not fall apart in our heads, but rather move away from the ruins. Establish the system that it can save the Muslims. Reestablish the gold dinar. Like Mahathir quite rightly said, the gold dinar as the currency of an Islamic trading bloc. He said it rightly. But you cannot bring the gold dinar the way Mahathir wanted to, from the top to the bottom. He went to the OIC, tried to convince the other central banks to relinquish their own currency and to use the gold dinar. His program was, in fact, much more timid than that. He wanted just to create an exchange in the balance of trading that it will be accounted in the form of gold, which is called gold indexation, which means you don't have to mint one single gold coin, which means it has nothing to do with the gold dinar. And as I argue, this is nothing to do, this program called the Malaysian program of the gold dinar, created by the Central Bank of Malaysia, surprise, surprise, has nothing to do with the gold dinar. Never mind, when he brought this really timid program into the OIC, it was dismissed within the hour. A debate was not allowed to happen, and why do I know about it? Because I was there. I was invited as the world expert on the gold dinar. I was there to defend the Malaysian program, which I couldn't defend, in fact. But they were ready already to dismiss it before we started the debate. The OIC will never be able, it's the consensus of the Muslim countries, especially through the OIC, is not the vehicle to bring the gold dinar. The OIC is the most incompetent organization in the history of mankind. The second worst. There must be another one worse than that one. If they cannot agree on something as simple as Palestine, how they are going to agree to something, the nature of which is the harakiri of the political institutions? It will never come from the top to the bottom. It will come from the bottom to the top. Who are the people who are ready immediately to use gold and silver? The people. The people are ready. So it is to us to use the gold dinar. We use it in our transaction. If you are a lawyer, you accept it in your shop, in your office. If you have a shop, you accept it in your shop. You use it because you want to, and nobody can stop you. When you go to another country, then you go and you use it in all the places that accept gold dinar, expanding the shop network, etc., etc. All this thing is going to accelerate it at a rapid speed when the dollar crisis comes into full flesh. Is there going to be a dollar crisis? Or just an Armageddon end of the world story? Well, no, I don't believe this is the end of the world, and I don't think it's the Armageddon. I think it's just a sad chapter in the history of mankind, a good chapter for us as a whole, but simply because a lot of people are going to suffer, a lot of people. There is going to be an enormous depression the world has never seen before, loss of jobs, thousands of banks will vanish, together with corporations dependent on them, and jobs will just be dismantled. Some countries will suffer more than others. England will suffer more than Albania. If you go to Albania the day after the crisis, they'll probably say, what crisis are you talking about? But in London, they will suffer. London is not a place you want to be. London, New York, Washington, Singapore. Malaysia will suffer more than Indonesia, simply because they have more dependence on their financial markets, but not as much as Singapore. Singapore is going to have a tough time. they deserve it for all the money they have stolen from Indonesians. And if they want a solution, we can give them the solution, which is to go back to gold and silver. But they have to do it right now. In fact, the irony is that there are more people in Singapore who understand paper money is a fraud than we have in Kuala Lumpur. And there are people in Singapore that they are saying, I have spoken with people there, interested of introducing gold and silver in Singapore, and honestly, it will be a shame to all of you if Singapore brings the gold dinar before you do. That will be really, really shameful. Well, that will not be possible because then the inland of Bintan in Indonesia, we're already minting gold dinar. And in Cirebon and in Ternate and in Indonesia, the gold dinar is more likely to succeed before anywhere else in this region. It's already thriving there. But in this event of a dollar crisis, I think it's important that we understand that there will be opportunities. It's not just something is falling apart. This is the time to bring solutions. And that's why when some people speak about what to do in the day of the crisis, my answer is not go run to the kampung and start planting tomatoes and have chickens. It is the time to be wise and to help the people in towns because they will need it. They will need solutions. It's the time for public marketplaces to create jobs. It will be the time in order to reorganize society alongside the lines of Muamalat. This crisis is a crisis for capitalism, but is the opening door for Muamalat. Only for those people who understand. Many will be dragged alongside with the crisis into the profundities of an enormous crisis. Politically speaking, the things will change dramatically. Remember, after the crisis of the 29, we had Hitler and Mussolini, different type of politicians, fascism, the people, a new type of politician with radical ideas, that they will take desperate measures. And they will not speak just perhaps maybe, but rather cut their heads off, put them in prison, and roll them in concentration camps. And that's not a very good idea either. But nothing could be worse than a World War III. And if you have to look by the experience of how capitalism has handled crisis before, war is the number one option. It's not the second or the third. It's what they do when they want to bring about a major change, as what is now required for them into the creation of world currency. They will resort to World War III. I mean, maybe 10 years ago it was difficult to imagine, but now you can see, I mean, how far these radicals in the Tea Party of America, they have gone to create this imperial fantasy in the Middle East. The whole idea of the war on terror, the 9/11 fantasy. This is how far they have gone. They have destroyed Iraq, they have destroyed Libya, they have destroyed Afghanistan. All they have to do is to say, what is next? Saudi Arabia? I bet you Saudi Arabia, even before Iran falls apart, is what they have done before. Take them one at a time. And Saudi Arabia will have to ask to themselves, why is happening to me? But I paid the money to destroy Egypt, who has been now a new military coup d'etat. They could not tolerate Morsi to be in power. Everybody's silent, but never mind. In Libya is chaos. Iraq is chaos. Syria is chaos. So Israel could just walk around and perhaps get another chunk of land in the process. Certainly nobody's going to oppose them. Who? Saudi Arabia is next. Yemen is already up in arms. So they need very little. as a trigger for a war? Well, I mean, the camps are already being formed. You have non-IMF, BRICS, China, India, Russia, Brazil, some other countries will join in. And on the other hand, the United States trying to preserve as much as they can of their fantasy world. You need Ukraine. Anything can trigger it. And there you are. The day after, you find yourself immersed in a war that nobody's going to win. Is this possible? Just look at the history before. It's not the first time it happens. It hasn't happened in our generation, that's all. Are they ready to do it? Well, just look at the bellicosity, the escalation of speech. Look at Putin. He has put all the eggs in one basket. He just signed a military agreement with Iran just 2 weeks ago, saying, you attack Iran, you attack us, Iran and Russia. So, it is a scenario. It's not the end of the world, certainly, but it is a possibility, not an unthinkable possibility, and certainly something that we have to consider. In the event of something of this nature, which, by the way, can happen tomorrow afternoon, for all the conditions are already there, is not a time to run away, not to hide the head like an ostrich. It's a time to use everything that we are learning about Muamalat in order to lead the matter forward. It is the time, precisely, in which the Muslims can shine. The question of the money, the end of the US dollar, is something that it needs to happen, not out of moral reasons, mathematically. It's a mathematical certainty. They have crossed the point of no return. Read on the people who have already writing about it continuously. And please notice the amount of how just only 2 weeks ago we were told that surprisingly large number of rich people in the United States are selling their houses and moving to the Caribbean islands and Bahamas and Cayman Islands. They are running away. I tell you, this can happen tomorrow. It can happen tomorrow. Are you ready? If this thing happened tomorrow, are you ready to? Do you understand what is at stake here? Okay, start thinking about it. Certainly, you have to bear in mind that this thing is going to accelerate transformation, and out of this transformation, something will emerge. Not necessarily Islam. I think my bet is that what we are going to see, before Islam comes back, we are going to see a world bank and a world government, whatever form it is, but they will try to. That day, it will be the day the whole thing will start falling down. Because the bankers would have achieved the maximum dream they ever had. La République Universelle, the World Bank, the whole world under their hands, one single currency, where they can just say, we are in charge. They might even, dispose of paper money altogether and just plant the chips. Now, it sounds crazy, the whole chip thing. I thought it was crazy, until I realized it's now being introduced voluntarily in the United States and Western Europe. They're already doing it. The next thing is that you go to the passport line, like my sister was pointing out to me last night, and you find that if you have the chip, you don't have any queue. If you don't have the chip, you have to queue for half an hour. So you start thinking, let's put this chip anyway. And there you are. And before you realize, that's it, you're done. They have complete control of money and who you are and what you do. If you do anything wrong, say anything wrong, or something is wrong, they delete you. Like, you do that like this, delete account. You cannot operate, you cannot buy, you cannot do anything. It's crazy. Well, it's already happening. It's already happening. To start with, all the passports, they have already this radio frequency code. That's already just to say hello, we are coming, we are here. The next thing, the logical thing, is just put it there. It's much easier. You don't have to queue. I mean, if you have it, you know, your tax is reduced 10%. If you have it, you have, you know, privileges here, there, life center, and, you know, no paperwork. Your children go to school automatically. They get preference on this and the other. How long the people are going to resist it? Even the most astounded defender of freedom, who says, no, I will never allow this thing to happen. How long? Before you realize everybody's doing it and you're simply being punished for not doing it. The people will start saying, some mufti will come and say, I'm the first mufti to do it. Use the Islamic chip. It has Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim encoded in it. You know, and of course, your money will be safe in an Islamic section of the World Bank. Somebody's laughing in the background, you know, and rolling in the floor if you look what you can do with the Muslims. It's just the easiest thing on earth. These are the scenarios. It's all to do with the collapse of paper money and what is coming next. Like Ernst Junger, who was a very famous author in Germany, we had the opportunity of meeting him. And he said one time for us, I love Islam. He said, for 3 reasons. I love Islam because of jihad, because I'm a soldier. Second, I love Islam because of the pilgrimage to Mecca, because the only good, noble reason to travel is to visit Mecca, is to do it for Allah. And thirdly, because of polygamy, because I love women. And so this man, who wrote numerous books on the concern of Western society and how it's going alongside with technology, predicted the creation of a world state. And he did it on a very simple German way of thinking, which is that it's technically possible. So if it is technically possible, a society which is technically driven will find itself doing what is technically possible. And therefore, you end up with a world state. And he said, the moment the world state comes into place, that will be the day where freedom can be finally affirmed. And that, I interpret it always in terms of this is the day Islam will appear. Nobody can hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me again? Yeah, fine. So these are scenarios. They may happen, they may not happen at all. Allahu alim. In truth, it's not my business. My business is to do what is in my hand right now. But I should think of those possibilities because I want to be ready just in case I found myself supporting an institution that it may no longer be there. And I'm talking about the national states. The world doesn't want them. They are too nationalistic. They prefer a complete submission to the banking authority. So they're going to dispose of them. And they have already done it in a large number of countries, so it's just a question of bending the last bits of nationalism, which it will be achieved through the combination of a good crisis and a good war, like they have done before. Our argument here is, what does Islam has to say on this matter? What really matters to us is to understand what our religion has to say on these issues and where to look for in order to understand it. what questions do we have to ask in order to understand it? And we start, like what I have done before, in regard to the markets and the caravans and the guilds, we go back to Medina and Munawwara. And what we find there is that the currency in Medina is not just gold and silver. That won't be true. They had several different currencies. The currency of Medina was freedom. And what we demand is not the restoration of gold and silver. What we demand is freedom. So we don't need to negotiate, because freedom does not belong to anybody except ourselves. We just take freedom, because anybody who can give you freedom can take it away from you. And what we are saying is that Allah has already legislated, and He has given the freedom to choose the medium of exchange that we have agreed. This brings about matters concerning banking, and as you have noticed, if you just pull a little bit the argument forward, to the very politics of today. But I want to focus the last 20 minutes of this talk into another aspect, given the fact that I will be covering more aspects of paper money in regard to how paper money interacts with the institution of banking when we discuss tomorrow the matter of riba, a topic that is of enormous importance. No Muslim can go through life without knowing what riba is. You are obliged to learn it. And from there, to be able to make your own conclusion about what a bank is what it will occupy us tomorrow. So my last topic today regarding these instruments of Muamalat, apart from, I recall, public marketplaces, caravans, guilds, dinar and dirham, is the contracts. And here we have something very important to say, because the contracts in Islam reflect the general prohibition of riba, and in general they reflect all the other elements that make something a contract halal. They are unique, they are extraordinary, they have simplified many of the possibilities of contracts that existed in the past, and they created something of their own. Partnership indeed existed before and existed today, although it's constricted, and not all the possibilities of a partnership that they are logically possible are allowed. But the institution of shirkat indeed existed way beyond before Islam. But my particular interest is in the context of kirat. If you want to know more about the question of shirkat, you can go into the many writings that there is on this topic. I have written quite a lot. In principle, perhaps if you want to just put some headlines of this, I would say that in Islam there is no minority ownership. It's something very important. So you don't have majority owners and minority owners. There is only owners. An owner is the one who can decide. So in a contract of majority ownership means those who hold the majority are the owners, and the people who are minority owners are not owners. Which means you cannot have partnership between majorities and minorities. For what makes ownership is the decision making. It's not that it's written in it. In other words, if I write in a piece of paper, you are free, and I put you in a jail, you are not free. Existentially, you are not free. Legally free, but existentially not free. The same thing with ownership. Ownership is only ownership if I can exercise it. It may say in a piece of paper I am the owner, but if I cannot decide, I'm not the owner. Islamically speaking, that existential reality is precisely what determines the legal reality, unlike the systems that we have in the West. So there is no votes in Islam. If you have two partners, and one owns 99% of the company and the other one owns 1% of the company, they have equal rights if they are co-owners. It means they have reached an agreement to be co-owners in that disparate proportion, which is not normal, but it could happen. If the parties agree that since I have 99% of the shares, I should make the decisions, you can decide, but that will not be called partnership. It will be called I borrow the money from you or you borrow the money from me. If I am the one making the decisions I am borrowing your money from you. But if I borrow money from somebody who is a minority shareholder, I'm not allowed to give him dividends, am I? Because in lending, there's no returns. Which brings us to the extraordinary realization that stocks in the stock exchange are frauds. Dividends are interest. Sukuk are frauds. The idea of an Islamic Dow Jones is absurd, because the contracts upon which the stock exchange operates are not valid, Islamically speaking. What is occurring in the name of partnership is investors who have no decision making in the company that they are buying stocks from lend the money to the majority owners who make the decision. Who are the owners? They are lending the money, not investment and not partnership, because it's not possible. This money is lent to them and they return dividends or no dividends, independent of the results of the company. The company may be earning money and they give you no dividends. The company may be losing money and they give you dividends. All they have to do is to borrow more. That is not legal in Islam. Well, these are the headlines. If you want more argumentation on the matter, I can provide it for you. But you can see that there are issues in the way, the same thing they have done with money, the same thing they have done with banks. They have reinterpreted Islamic law, and they just don't care. They have Islamized everything they want. But the interesting thing is the contract of Kirat. It's a jewel. It's a jewel. It's almost a creation of ours. There were similar contracts before Islam, but we perfected this one. It's the contract of Kirat. It's the contract of the caravans. It's the contract of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It consists of the following. A person, as an investor, lends. And the word lend is appropriate because Kirat is from qard, which is lending. Lends the money to another person, who is the agent, who takes full responsibility of the money. He takes the money, the cash. It can only be done in cash. It cannot be done in produce. So dinar or dirham. He gets the money. He buys some goods locally, and then he sells it in another market. Typically, this occurs during the season of the caravan. The money was collected from the people of the town. It was given to one agent, and he was responsible of buying and selling. When the caravan came back, the agent would have obtained profit if it was good enough or lucky enough, and Allah had provided for him. He will come with profit, in which case he will share the profit with the investor at the rate stipulated in the country and the contract, let's say 50-50. If a loss was incurred in that contract, the entire loss was to be assumed by the investor. It was understood that the agent had lost all the value of his work, 100%. And the value invested by the investor was the money that he had put in. So if there was, he started with an investment of 1,000 and the agent comes back with 800, the money goes directly to the investor. All the remaining goes to the investor, but he assumes full responsibility of that 200 that has been lost. These are the rules of Kirat. There are some more. One of the ones that I found more revolutionary is the fact that there is no collateral in Kirat. No collateral. Now tell this thing to the Islamic bankers, please. There's no question on the matter. There's no collateral. Of course, without collateral, the Islamic banks cannot operate. But what is the beauty about no collateral? It means that the people lend money to some individual without no collateral, only on account of the honor of these people. The reason that you will be credit worthy in the days of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you are credit worthy not because you have money. Money goes to money, philosophy that we have today. But because you are honest, it's the only thing you have. Collateral is forbidden according to Imam Malik. Forbidden. So the only thing you have is the reputation given to you by your community, your Jama'ah, who said, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he is the trustworthy. And people trusted him. That's how he met his wife, his first wife. Trust, which means that when society benefits and upholds the people who are honest, that society will become more honest. But when honesty doesn't mean anything at all that matters is that you have money, you are encouraging to create a society of crooks, which is what you have today. The banks will lend the money to somebody irrespective of who he is. They don't care. He's a thief. He's bad-mannered. He doesn't care. He's egotistic. He's whoever, whatever. You have collateral, you get the money. You have 1 billion, you get 1 billion. And that's how it works. So it's not that we didn't know what collateral was. It's that this society didn't need it. Didn't want it because it didn't mean anything to them. The point was, unlike all the societies in the periphery of us, we lend the money to the person who we consider to be honest. The people could cheat, but only once. Because if you cheat, you have a tough time in Medina. Like I said to you about the markets, the muhtasibs and the people they went through the market, checking the balances and the weights and the good conduct, and seeing that nobody was shouting or abusing, or there is no fixed prices in Islam. Only occasionally, in certain conditions, is allowed. But in general, it's not allowed. So there was bargaining. But if somebody comes to the marketplace that is not aware of the prices of Medina, and the trader abuses him with prices that they are way beyond, like it happens everywhere today, in Morocco or in Kuala Lumpur, this person, he will be the first time warned. The Muqtasim will come to him and he will warn him. The second time, he will get a fine, and depending on the severity of the affair, he can even have lashes. 20, 50, or 100. And the third time, he will have lashes for sure, and expulsion from the marketplace. And that means dead. It means you have not a chance. Because it doesn't matter where you went, nobody will look at you. Reputation. A society that it was based on honor. That's why the governor of Kufa said, don't cover the merchandise. Leave the markets, don't worry, nobody's going to steal. He was that sure that nobody will touch anything because he was ruthless. You don't cheat in a marketplace in Islam. The lashes, they have two forms of doing the lashes. One is the one that you have seen, like this, somebody tied up and lashes. But another one, which was typical of the marketplaces, is the two lines. So the market, the people in the marketplace had the sticks in their hands, and he had to go all the way through until the other end, like in a corridor of people, on two sides. Fast. If there was no repent at the end, because he had to confess, he had to say what he has done. So he had to shout while he was being beaten, I'm a thief, I have robbed this and this. And if he doesn't say it loud enough, they will hit him harder. So you remember and something like this before you cheat to somebody else. So reputation and kirat. Reputation and kirat, they go together. Kirat is a revolutionary contract. It's a contract that not only ennobles people, but it enhances trading, it connects routes, it makes the markets more vibrant, more variety, it brings wealth to the nation, And Kirat in itself, it has been seen by historians outside Islam as having a revolutionary character in terms of providing with the extraordinary rising of the city-states of Italy during the Renaissance, before the advent of the present capitalist system. And with that, I conclude this chapter in understanding that we have our own model of Islam. These are the headlines. Islam has a model. Muamalat is a model. We don't need to Islamize capitalism. We don't want to, but we don't need to, because we have institutions better than what we offer. We don't need paper money because we have dinar and dirham. We don't need supermarkets and malls because we have public marketplaces. We don't need monopolistic distribution networks because we have open distribution networks, the caravans. We don't need a wage slavery of corporations who own one employee, 40,000 employees, but new system of equals coming together, which is the guilds. We have our own contracts that reflect our morality. We don't need to Islamize somebody else's. We can use our contracts according to what they are, the way they operate it. But in order to do that, we need to bring back at the very heart of our societies the understanding, the teaching, and the implementation of Muamalat. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.